Scott just made
Go
the
back to
point.
Thomas
Jefferson
Jefferson, you'll
used to
read
be a
that-
lot more secure, not just.
Well, I stumbled upon an interesting image as I wandered the endless corridors of the internet. You know what this is? This is your movie at your local theater. It used to be that a film was delivered, on film. Big metallic case with rolls of celluloid. Not anymore. Most theaters these days have digital projection, and when you open that yellow box, you get what's essentially a really big hard drive, which you plug into the projector, and off you go. So let's bring in Steve Green and Scott Ott to see if we can figure out why I'm doing a segment about luggage today. Lads, all across the country, yellow cases just like this one are being distributed to theaters, and some of those yellow cases contain total flops. You know, the inside term for these movies is Seth Rogen movies. But inside some of these cases lies a prize more spectacular than the golden Inca statue at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, because inside one of those yellow cases is a disc drive for a film called Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And it looks set to blow away every box office record just clean out of the water. People have been camping out in line for the premiere for 4 weeks, not 4 days, 4 weeks. But look, I don't want to talk about box office, and I don't even really want to talk about the movie. Steve, what is it about Star Wars, now the original trilogy, obviously not those films that shall not be named. What is it about Star Wars, do you think, that's such a cultural phenomenon and that resonates so strongly with people?
Well, for me, it was a two-step process of how I got there. Star Wars, it is not Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. It is Star Wars, the original movie. Came out when I was an 8-year-old boy, summer of '77, and I can tell you in one word, or maybe two, depending on how you spell it, exactly why I fell in love with Star Wars. Lightsabers. That was it. I love science fiction movies. I love anything with sword fights, and they gave these guys laser swords. It was like George Lucas had sucked things right out of my brain and put them on the screen, the happiest things he could possibly make just for me. But as I got older, I realized the reason Star Wars holds up, the original trilogy, all three of them, is the seamless integration of characters that you love or love to hate, and action. And it occurred to me that there is just a brief moment, just a few seconds in the Death Star Detention Center escape sequence in Star Wars that just illustrates that so beautifully. You've got Luke, Han, and Leia trapped down that long corridor. There's no way out. There's stormtroopers flooding in the other side. There's laser blasts shooting at all of them. And Princess Leia, who's just been rescued from her cell, says, "You got in here. Didn't you have a plan for getting us out?" More laser fire. And Han says, "He's a brain, sweetheart," looking over at Luke. More laser blasts. And Luke says, "But I..." More laser blasts. And in that moment, with all that action, everybody just trying to survive, all three of your major characters were perfectly defined in their roles. That is such a rare thing to see. The action and the characterizations just married hand in hand like that.
Yeah, it's something, all right. You know, Scotty, I'm actually getting a little sensitive about how often I make you the go-to religious guy, but since you're the go-to religious guy, the Church of the Jedi is gaining about 1,000 new members a week, as I recall reading recently. Traditional Christianity is probably losing that many or more. Is Star Wars essentially a religious movie, and what do you think drives modern Americans to join the Order of the Jedi?
Well, let me challenge the premise of the question for a moment and then deal with it. And I believe you if you say the Church of the Jedi is growing by 1,000 members a week. However, it is not true that that Orthodox Christianity or evangelical Christianity is shrinking, at least not on a global basis. It may be true in given old line, mainline churches that are, their hair is turning blue and they're not recruiting new members and the nursery is empty and there's some lady in there rocking with a doll because there are no babies in the nursery. But in reality, Christianity is growing and expanding, especially in the Third World, where many missionaries have labored for over 100 years to bring the gospel to those places. Nevertheless, I was going to say, when Steve was talking, I thought, that's the appeal of Star Wars for me, is that it's a clear battle of good versus evil. And not only that, but the little guy who seems to be powerless has, in effect, spiritual resources upon which he can call to allow him to triumph against inexorably huge odds in ways that you would never expect. And I think that many of the great stories and the great movies have been that little guy, all the way back to, sort of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, to put it in a different context, is that idea that somebody who seems powerless can overcome something of great power, and in fact, their weakness becomes their strength. And I think you find that message over and over in the New Testament, where in our weakness, Jesus is strong.
Well, when it comes to Star Wars phenomenon, I think there are two things at work here, and Scotty just outlined both of them, but I'll just go into a little bit more detail on this. First of all, I think you need to look at the first three Star Wars movies as a trilogy, as one movie, basically. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. That's one movie with 3 acts. And what's so perfect about that original trilogy is that it is a classic, perfect retelling of the essential human story, which is the journey of the hero. Joseph Campbell wrote about this in Hero with a Thousand Faces. The story is exactly the same, and it never changes. You have a person who is basically a farm boy. He is unaware of the fact that he has noble blood flowing through his veins. Luke Skywalker is the son of Anakin Skywalker, although he doesn't know it. Arthur is the son of Uther Pendragon, although he doesn't know it. Aragorn is lost out in the woods someplace. He knows he's the son of somebody powerful, but they're off the charts. They don't have any sense of accomplishment. And this story arc is always the same, really. What happens is this person starts out as a callow youth. They meet an advisor who's a wizard. It'd be Obi-Wan Kenobi, or it'd be Gandalf or Merlin. And there's a rogue, which might be might be Han Solo, or it might be Aragorn, or it might be Lancelot. And these characters are all the same in all of these movies. And these forces help to mold this hero and turn him basically from a farm boy into a warrior. But the one thing that's common in these stories, and the reason these stories work so well, is if you think about it, in this case of Merlin and the case of Arthur and Aragorn and Luke Skywalker, all three of them have to atone for fatal errors that their fathers made. Their fathers grabbed power, and these kids have spent their entire lives worried that they will fall into the same trap. So the moment where the story becomes complete is the moment where they give up the power, and that is the moral test that they passed that their fathers failed, and that's what allows them to become truly kings. When Luke Skywalker turns off his lightsaber and throws it to the ground, and he says, "I'm a Jedi like my father," that's the moment where it becomes perfect mythology. And I would just say it as a much simpler point. It's exactly what Scott said too. Star Wars is about good and evil. There's nothing nuanced about it. If you see the very first scene in the first movie, what you see as the ship is boarded is you see the people in the Rebel Alliance, and they are individual people with real faces. These are people who could be you and me. There's an explosion when the hull is breached. It's a red-lit gates of hell open, and out come these living skeletons, which are the stormtroopers with skulls for faces. They're skeletons. And then out comes a 7-foot-tall creature with a death mask and a cape and a Nazi helmet, and most people probably went, "I think that's the bad guy." You don't have to feel bad. You don't have to feel bad about gunning down skeletons. Stormtroopers you can kill all the stormtroopers you want to because they're not really people. And on some level, it's a perfect example of individual people who are good fighting this sort of faceless, enormous, masked evil. And it is just really, it's a perfect story. I think this new one is going to be good. I hope they have the sense to rebuild this next trilogy the way they built the first one. So on behalf of Steve Green, Scott Ott, and the entire Trifecta team, go with God, or may the Force be with you, because it's the same thing, really.